Hi, everybody. My name is Mickey Tobler. Many of you know me. I'm here as a representative of the Kansas Science Communication Initiative, and we're really happy about the fourth installment of our Science Communication Week happening this week, and welcome you all to our first event with Sarah Winicki, who's going to talk about science communication on social media. Many of you probably remember Sarah, although she is now at the University of Illinois. She used to be a Wildcat. Also, until about a year ago, Sarah was here studying birds on Kansas Prairie, actually. And they now study how hormones affect bird growth, right?
Yep.
And so over the years, Sarah has gained a wide variety of experiences in science communication. I know few people that have engaged in such diverse settings. And one of the things they do is they have a very active social media account. And so we're excited to have you back, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time. And yeah, we're excited to hear what you have to tell us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me, Dr. Tobler. Thank you all for joining me. I know it's been a pretty hectic week, so I'm grateful that you're all still here and tuning in. As Dr. Tobler mentioned, my name is Sarah. I'm a PhD student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I don't study social media, so I'm not coming to you as an expert in this. I'm coming to you as someone who spends a lot of time on social media and has invested in learning how to use social media to communicate science. And so I'm hoping to convince you today to spend a lot of time on social media as well, and to do that as effectively as possible. So in the next hour, I'll lead you through the following topics. First off, why do science communication on social media at all? And then I'll talk about the different platforms available, focusing on my three favorite: Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'll talk about crafting a post on these different sites, about driving engagement for that post. I'll address how you reach out to followers on social media, how often you need to do it, and how to gauge success. Finally, if I have time, I'm going to walk you through an example post for each of the three platforms. Communicating to live audiences is a particularly important part of science communication. Meeting people one-on-one, engaging them with your research, giving them hands-on activities like I'm doing here with school groups or with adults, audiences. However, communicating with local audiences very much limits your scope and the number of people that you can reach. So normally I start this talk by trying to convince you that communicating online is important. Although if you're like me, you've probably been doing most of your communication online since the beginning of the pandemic. But if you're still not convinced, here you go. There are millions of people online, many, many more than you can reach with local outreach. Here's an outdated map of the count of internet users by country. We're talking hundreds of millions of people. If you can contact some of them from the comfort of your home, next to your cuddly cats, it would definitely be worth the effort. There are many ways you can communicate online. You can set up your own personalized website to tout your research in science. Here is the website, my website, personal website, and the website of my master's degree supervisor, Dr. Alice Boyle. You can compile all your research endeavors onto one site like this. You can share resources. You can keep your portfolio together. It's really nice, and I recommend doing it. Websites can reach a lot of people. So here are the statistics from my personal website in the last 4 months. Almost 7,000 viewers from a handful of countries around the world. They're seeing my website, my research output, my outreach endeavors, even my CV potentially. I'm going to be talking about my personal profiles, my websites, my social media accounts a lot throughout this talk, not because I think they're especially important in any way, but they're the only websites for which I have readily available statistics. However, there are many, many more than 7,000 viewers available on the internet if you know where to look. This graph is outdated. The data are from 2017, but the point still stands. There are billions of users looking at social media sites every month. Social media presents a great place to advertise your science to a larger audience, even if it's just bringing some of that audience to your personal site. If I had to guess, many of the 7,000 visitors to my personal site came from my social media accounts. And so I'm going to talk to you today about the top social media platforms. Facebook and YouTube, which you can see here, have the highest number of monthly viewers. The other high-profile platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and WeChat are all personal direct messaging sites where users send private messages to each other, so I'll be excluding them from this talk. I'm not going to talk specifically about Instagram, primarily because I don't use it, but also because it's a photo sharing app that limits the audience that you can reach, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later. I do want to talk to you about Twitter, as it's my favorite place to do science communication work, and because it's a popular place for scientists in general, for whatever reason. Social media can very much expand your ability to reach audiences. I may have had almost 7,000 views on my personal website, but I've had almost 48,000 views on my YouTube channel, spanning a large audience from 18-year-olds to over 65-year-olds, according to the demographic breakdown that YouTube provides. Just in the month of August, over 707,000 people viewed my tweets and 3,500 people went to my Twitter profile. 800 people have mentioned me or my work. Yet at the same time, you might notice that this was not without a massive effort. I don't know if you can see my pointer and where I'm circling on the screen, but you can see that the number of times I tweeted in just August 2020 was over 1,000. So more on that later. So why use social media? It's accessible to you, free of charge, unless you're using a third-party app or paying for advertisements, once you have purchased the internet and devices you can use to access the internet, of course. Likewise, it's accessible for your audiences that have access to the internet. I will emphasize that it's really important to do other outreach activities so you can reach an audience that doesn't have internet access, but this is a good start. Secondly, you can access it anytime, anywhere. Do science communication in your pajamas. Do it in the middle of a pandemic. Your audience can reach you from quarantine in their own pajamas. There is a potential that you can reach folks with internet access around the globe. You aren't limited to local people that you can make contact with. And finally, it's stored online. You can reach an audience even after you're done communicating, in contrast to events which will end once you pack up everything and you no longer have access to that audience. Of course, social media is not without its cons. It's stored online. Should you want to change your message at some point, you'll need to remember what you said previously and know that that is still out there. You also know how important it is to know your audience when you're communicating, but on social media, your audience may be unknown and anonymous. I'll give you some tips on getting to know your audience, but it's often daunting to interact with seemingly random people online. Similarly, the interactions can be uncontrolled. You can lead a room and control a narrative when you're communicating to an in-person audience, but online you may meet bad actors who can attempt to control and divert your narrative. It can be scary at times, but Twitter and Facebook allow you to block individuals, and you can always work to ignore their comments, no matter how hard that seems. Finally, the different platforms you may use, like Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, have inherent restrictions that you must deal with when you're crafting your science communication narrative. So let's dive into some of those now. Social media is good because you can reach a broad audience with relatively little labor. What are your options in terms of different social media platforms? I'll start with Facebook, as it's the most widely used social media platform in the world. In North America, a little under half of the entire population uses Facebook regularly. So here's what a current Facebook profile looks like. I just had to update this again because Facebook updates every other time I give this talk. What does it all mean? Most importantly, there's an option to create a Facebook post. You can type in what you want your friends to see, including live video that you record in the moment, photos and videos that you upload from your computer, and you can even attach a mood should you want to convey a specific feeling to your audience. You can upload your own original organic content, or you can share what others post. So let's say I wanted to share this advertisement from the Bird Collective, which sells patches of birds. I can hit that share button on the right of the screen, and I'm given all these options. I can share it immediately with my friends on my feed. I can share it with a comment by clicking the share to news feed. I can send it as a direct private message to a friend of my choosing. I can share it in a group that I lead or on a page that I manage, on the timeline of a friend. There's lots of ways to share information on Facebook. In addition to static posts, you can also share a story. This is a short-lived visual post that's only around for a short period of time, like 24 hours. So what else is going on in a Facebook feed? You can go to home, where you can see everything that is going on with the pages you follow, the groups in which you belong. Sorry, I don't know why that left. You can go to Facebook Live, where you can view videos as they're happening. You can go to Facebook Marketplace, where you can sell products and buy from other people. You can go to your different groups. You can even go to Facebook Gaming, should you want to play games on Facebook. On your home screen, you can navigate your notifications. Facebook will tell you when you have new comments on your posts, new interactions with others. You can get direct messages from your friends and even others who view your profile, who aren't your friends. You can add new pages, which are static entities that only you can post to. So these are a great way to collect all your information in one space and have people follow a specific topic like your research. You can also create groups where you build a community that can post material and comment on each other's posts, which is a great way to build a like-minded community that will see and view and interact with your science. On the left-hand side of the screen, you find your own profile, the pages you manage and follow, the friends, the groups you're a part of, and once again, Marketplace, where you can sell items. As I mentioned, there's a lot that you can do on Facebook. You can post a lot of your identity onto Facebook if you so choose. Let your friends get to know you as a person and a scientist if you want. You can get all sorts of your background and history up on Facebook if you think that that will benefit you as a communicator. List where you've worked, where you're from, build your credentials. You can do all of that here on Facebook. You can make photo albums storing many, many images on Facebook. I post photos of my work in addition to photos of my pets, photos of doing the work, photos of cool birds that I see. You can even go so far as to post your favorite movies, TV shows, books. On one hand, you're giving Facebook lots of information that they can sell to advertisers and other third parties. But on the other hand, you're giving your friends new ways to relate to you and to you not only as a scientist, but also as a person. It's a balancing act that you should think critically about should you choose to use Facebook. As I mentioned, you can create more than just posts and photo albums. You can create pages for your work or groups of like-minded individuals. Here's a community close to my heart. It's a group that I made for bird photographers to post mediocre photos they take of birds, and then we all commiserate together in the comments. So there's so much you can accomplish on Facebook, so many resources you can use to proliferate your message. It can be a bit overwhelming. So you have Facebook. How do you build an audience? To interact with many people directly, you need to search out folks, send friend requests, and wait for those requests to be accepted. Other people will request friendship with you, and you can accept those requests. Your feed will show posts from your friends, both the organic posts that they make and those that they have shared. You can meet new people by searching them by name or by interacting both in groups that you make and in ones that you find interesting. Seem onerous? It is. On Facebook, you need to work really hard to build an audience to view your posts. So in conclusion, this is Facebook, the largest social media platform in the world. It's extremely versatile. You can write posts, share short-lived stories, make and interact with groups, make pages for your research, hawk your wares on the marketplace. There's a lot to do on Facebook. There's a lot of room to personalize on Facebook. But ultimately, you're limited to the number of people who accept your friend request, and join your groups. So it takes a while to build a community on Facebook. Next up is Twitter. Twitter may not have the same reach as Facebook, but as of 2019, it has over 300 million monthly users, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at. So what does a Twitter feed look like? Once you set up your profile, you're given the option to post a tweet. You can add text, but only 280 characters, including spaces. You can add a video or up to 4 photos. You can add a GIF from the large searchable library that Twitter offers. You can create a poll with up to 4 choices to gauge your viewers' interests. You can add emojis, and you can even schedule a tweet to go live at a certain time. And so this is a relatively new feature. You used to have to use third-party apps to schedule tweets. I really appreciate that I can do it now in Twitter. On others' tweets, you're given the option to comment, again with a 280 character limit. You can retweet the tweet, which will share it on your own feed. You can add a comment, or you can do that without comments, or you can add a comment so you can give your perspective on the tweet that you're sharing. You can also like a tweet to show your support. You'll see trending tweets based on your location and interests. You can explore those trends on the right-hand side of the page or on the Explore tab on the left-hand side. On the left, you'll get notifications about the tweets that you send and any direct messages that you have received. Again, you can get them from people that you follow, who follow you back, or also from just other people on Twitter. You can bookmark tweets you want to remember for later. So should you want to save a paper that somebody tweets about or something funny that you will want to share later, you can bookmark it. And you can view the lists that you're a part of. So lists are collections of different accounts, different users that you can make to lump together folks with shared interests. You can build your own lists and other people can add you to their own lists. Once you're on a list of like-minded individuals, you can go through and follow each account on that list to interact with more of your peers. Lists will be suggested to you by Twitter, but you can't search for them on the desktop app, which is a real flaw in my opinion. Here you can see the list that I'm a part of. If I click on the American Ornithological Society list, I can see the Twitter feed of other members on the list. Because I follow the list itself, I will get updates on my own Twitter feed from people on the list, even if I don't follow them directly. So lists can be a powerful tool to build a community on Twitter. They're just kind of unwieldy to use, which I think is a shame. As I mentioned before, Twitter limits posts to 280 characters. What if you have more to say? You can always add more information by adding a photo with text or linking to a paper or website. You can also thread tweets by adding more tweets in the comment of your own tweet. Twitter will give users the option to see this thread where you can click and see the whole list of tweets in order. If you're going to build a Twitter thread, it's good to let your audience know that there are more tweets to come. So they click on those tweets to view them later. In this case, this author shows that this tweet is the first of 11 tweets in the thread. So how do you interact with folks on Twitter? Your feed will display tweets of the accounts that you follow, both their organic tweets, the ones that they come up with, their retweets, and even sometimes their likes. So this is unique relative to Facebook. This can be a little frustrating at times because Twitter feeds aren't chronological, so you won't necessarily be getting the most relevant information first. So if you're checking to see election news, you might have to be constantly refreshing to see the most relevant tweets as they come in, which I learned this week. But you will see things that your colleagues are interacting with eventually. You can search and follow Twitter accounts, plus Twitter accounts will suggest, or Twitter will suggest accounts based on your interests. You can tell Twitter what you're interested in when you set up an account, like different keywords, or Twitter will start to assume your interests based on the sites and the tweets with which you interact. You can follow up to 5,000 accounts, and they don't need to follow you back. After you have more than 5,000 followers, that number increases, so you can follow more than 5,000 after that point. Critically, again, these accounts don't have to follow you back, so you can build this whole community of scientists. You can watch all these people accounts. They don't need to reciprocate at all like you would have to do on Facebook. So who to follow if you're trying to build a list of 5,000 people to follow? One good place to start is looking for verified accounts. So these are accounts from individuals and organizations that Twitter verifies as being both legitimate and noteworthy. If the account is verified, they get this special little check mark next to their name. You can see that this astronaut here has a check mark, but this 5th grade teacher does not. This astronaut is also a bird person, which is pretty cool. So who ends up getting verified? It's mostly journalists, athletes, actors, different company, business people. These are what Twitter considers to be famous and noteworthy people. But there's also quite a few neat science communicators that have large enough followings that they've been verified. So as you start to interact with other scientists you follow and they start liking the feed or the Twitter posts of these different scientists, you'll start to see their accounts more and more often. You can follow them and start to build this long list of accounts that you're following. So in summary, Twitter. There are many, many scientists on the app in my experience, and there are millions of other users. You can craft tweets of 280 characters or start to thread those tweets to provide more information. You can comment, retweet, and like posts to share with your followers. You can follow trends and search for hashtags. I'll talk a little bit more about hashtags later. You can create lists with your favorite communicators, and you can follow anyone. There's no need for them to follow you back, so you're not limited to who will accept your friend request, like on Facebook. Finally, that leaves us with YouTube. So why YouTube? There are many, many people who use YouTube. Over 95% of internet users ages 18 to 34, even half of the people 75 and above use YouTube, which is a pretty spectacular number in my opinion. Sorry for the election ads on these screenshots. They dominated YouTube in the last few weeks, so I couldn't find anything but that. So on YouTube, you can upload videos. You can upload live videos that you're filming in the moment, or you can upload a video from your computer or phone that you have saved. You can get notifications when people interact with your posts, if they comment on your videos, or if they subscribe to your channel. So when somebody subscribes, they get notifications when you have posted a new video. So they're not the only ones who can view your videos, but they're the ones who are more likely to view your videos once they have subscribed. Your library contains all the watched videos that you have watched and videos that you have queued up to watch. You can purchase video access, such as access to movies, and you can put videos on a list for later. When you watch a video, let's say you're watching this neat lecture, you can comment on that video. So then the other video watchers will see it, as will the people who posted the video. You can subscribe to the channel. Again, you will get access to their content when it comes out. You don't have to subscribe to see these videos, but it's nice to get alerts when new videos are posted by accounts that you like. When you post your own video, you're given the option to write a short description, although only the first few sentences will appear to viewers unless they click show more. You're given the option to view the analytics of the video. So you can see the number of times that the video was watched, the user demographics, etc. You can edit the video. You can compile your video into playlists. Both your videos and other videos that you like can go into these playlists. Viewers will be led through the playlist if they click the autoplay option. This is a great way to bring your content to more viewers, and if you're lucky enough, somebody will put your videos into their own playlists, which will lead new viewers to your channel. You can design your channel to an extent with cover photos, a short description in that About tab, and your own photo, something like that, but it's certainly not to the extent that you can personalize your Facebook or even your Twitter profiles. Should viewers peruse your channel, they can find your videos in the video tab, the playlist that you make, they can search your channel specifically. So that is YouTube. How do you interact with people on YouTube? You post videos and you make playlists. You can comment on other people's videos and respond to others' comments on your own videos. You can subscribe to other channels to see their content when it comes out. But in my experience, there is very limited interactions on YouTube, and it leads to a feeling of a much smaller community. However, YouTube can act as a long-term storage for videos that everyone can watch even if they aren't subscribed to your channel. Get your videos on playlists to guide viewers through your material and hope that other people will put your videos on their own playlists too. So the vast majority of my YouTube views are actually from other people's playlists. So how to choose? As I mentioned before, Facebook is the most commonly used social media app. 53% of people in 2017 report being on Facebook several times a day in the United States. But your message is generally restricted just to your friends. YouTube is the next most popular platform, but it's hard to build a community on YouTube. Twitter may not be as popular, but you have a bigger reach. So as in all science communication efforts, you must think about your intended audience. I sort of assumed that more young people would be on Twitter or YouTube and older folks would be on Facebook, because that's about how my social media breaks down. But here are some stats broken out by age group. The age group breakdown is relatively similar between the platforms, with Facebook perhaps leaning the oldest in users. You can also search the demographics of people who use these accounts and these different websites, but for the most part, so many people are using them that the breakdowns look similar between the different platforms. After a decade on Facebook, I have a little short of 1,000 people that have the possibility of seeing my posts. And again, this is about 10 years worth of friending people. On Twitter, on the other hand, that number jumps to 5,500, but I also really work to build that community. That's where I put in the most effort. But as I mentioned before, on YouTube, over 47,500 people have viewed my videos. And it's a social media platform on which I've spent the least amount of time. So you can take that all into account when choosing the platforms you want to use. So why not just post the same thing and share it between the sites, you might ask. And then you don't have to choose which platform you're using. You don't have to worry about these restrictions or anything like that. In some cases, that works really well. So Instagram is owned by Facebook. So any post I share on Instagram will be seamlessly integrated into Facebook should I want to share it on Facebook. However, when I post a YouTube video on Facebook, all that pops up is a little thumbnail of the video and a link. And so users would actually have to go and directly click that link to take them to YouTube. And many of them will not bother to put in that effort. Likewise, Twitter and Facebook don't share very well. As you can imagine, it's hard to share a long post on Facebook on Twitter due to those character limits. And you certainly can't share your Facebook and Twitter posts on YouTube. So instead, I recommend uploading everything separately to each platform, which is sort of a pain. But here I uploaded that same video, but I embedded it into Facebook, uploaded it directly. So now viewers can view it live on Facebook without having to click a link and go somewhere else, should they want to see baby birds getting brutally killed. So that was a kind of long-winded rundown of the platforms. How do you actually go about crafting a post? I'm not going to tell you what your content should look like. You'll need to bring your own scientific communication skills to bear on that, but I will give you tips on how to build the post on the different social media platforms. But before you build a post, you need to set up a profile. Are you just going to use your name? Can you come up with a descriptive title for your project and use that instead? Would you like to go with fun puns? Across the different social media platforms, I just use my name. My master's advisor, Dr. Alice Boyle, went with the Twitter handle Bird Fiddler because she works with birds and plays the fiddle. My colleague, Katie Silber, went with Katie Silbird because she studies birds. On Facebook, you can choose one name for your profile or page, but on Twitter, as you see here, you get your name, which is in bold, and your handle, which follows an @ sign and has to be unique. So you're the only one on Twitter who gets that handle. So you're restricted by that. Should you try to use something that other people have used before, you will not be able to. People will search you by both your name and your handle, but when they tag you in posts, the only thing that people will see will be that handle. So choose both wisely. Whatever you choose, I recommend keeping it consistent across all the platforms that you use. So somebody searching for you on Facebook will be able to find you by your name. Somebody searching for you on Twitter will be able to find you by your name, YouTube, etc. On Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, you get to choose a profile photo. For Twitter, my main communication platform, I actually commissioned an avatar to support a scientific artist. You can change your profile picture whenever you want, but the change can be jarring for your users, so I recommend changing it seldomly. The only time I change my profile photo is when I'm doing in-person conferences, so people can more easily recognize what I look like in real life. On all platforms, you can get a short about section. Here's my Twitter one. Once again, you're limited in the number of characters, so choose what you want to say about yourself wisely. I list what I study, where I study it, whose lab I work in, the handles and the accounts I made for my individual projects. For instance, @GrowBirdGrow is my PhD project account. And then @SKWinicki is my personal account. I list things that I'm interested in, like #SciComm, and then the pronouns I use so that folks know how to refer to me. You can list where you're at, so I'm in Urbana, Illinois, and you can link to a website or something, so that links to my personal website. As I mentioned before, Facebook has many, many more options for customization and about. So you can list all of your past jobs, you can list blurbs about yourself, where you're located, you can list your favorite quotes, share as much or as little as you would like. On YouTube, I spend more of my space on a disclaimer to tell folks that I'm handling the animals in my videos with training and permits, but you can also customize it as much as you like. You can put paragraphs in this about section. You can choose a profile photo, you can choose a cover photo. The default for your profile will actually be your Google account photo. And that's how you would edit your channel. So you're all set up and you're ready to post. What can you do? On Facebook, you aren't limited by the number of characters, so write as much as you want. But know that after about a paragraph or so, Facebook is going to cut you off. They're going to crop out the rest of the text, and they're going to force users to click on a show more link to get more of your material. Many people won't bother to click on that show more. So get your main point across in the first few sentences. Draw them in if you can to get them to read more. As I've mentioned now numerous times, Twitter limits you to 280 characters, but you can always build a thread by clicking this little plus arrow on the bottom of the tweet next to the tweet all option, and you can continue adding tweets as you wish before tweeting them all, or you can tweet and then add comments under that tweet, and that will also act like a thread. YouTube lets you add as much text as you want, but only the briefest amount will appear before a show more button, like only a sentence. So either you're really going to have to lead people in to that text and get them to click on that show more button, or just keep it really short and simple. Plus, most people going to YouTube aren't going to read text, they're going to watch videos. So I keep mine very short. So got a short and sweet message, put it on Twitter. A paragraph of information, put it on Facebook. 4 photos or fewer, try Twitter. If you have a big photo album, lots of sparrow pictures, put it on Facebook. If you have a standalone video, you can put it on any of the sites, but of course, YouTube is a great place for standalone video, and it is a bad place for basically anything else. When you're crafting a post, you can tag other people, like your collaborators. On Facebook, you can type in the name of any of your friends and their profile will appear in a drop-down menu, and you can select that and they will get a notification that they've been tagged in your post. On Twitter, you need to type in that @ sign and then type in their handle, and it'll appear in a drop-down window. Fun Twitter tip, if you start with somebody's handle, Twitter will view it as a reply to them, and it won't show up on the main feed. So if you would go to your profile and look for a tweet that you sent, if you started with somebody's handle, you won't see that tweet at all. And neither will the people who follow you. So if you want to lead with somebody's name, start with a different character. So I put a period before I started typing in Dr. Boyle's handle so that this doesn't act as a reply to Dr. Boyle and nothing else. On YouTube, you can put a URL link to other channels. That's sort of inconvenience, as people will have to copy paste that link and put it into their, like type out that URL. But unlike the other platforms, you can embed keywords into your video metadata. So you can choose as many keywords as you want. If I have a video, for instance, of a Henslow sparrow singing, I try to tag as many different things I can think of related to the project and related to the video, so that if somebody searches something like Henslow sparrow, they'd find my video, but also if they search tallgrass prairie, I'd come up in the search options for that too. Whereas you can't actually add any metadata tags to your Twitter or Facebook posts. You can link articles and websites on each of the platforms. As I mentioned before, YouTube videos will show as a thumbnail and a link on Facebook, which can be inconvenient, but other platforms will actually be viewable, like Vimeo. I've never worked with Vimeo before, so I don't know how easy it is to actually use that site. If you're linking to a different website, the thumbnail will pop up for that as well. If you link to a website on Twitter, don't worry, that URL doesn't count for your character count. So it doesn't matter if it's a long URL. A thumbnail will pop up for your website, just like on Facebook. In this case, the author links to their newest paper. Remember, though, that many folks on Twitter won't have access to your paper. You're probably interacting with a lot of non-scientists. So think critically about the best way to share your science with a broad audience, and that may not be just linking to a paper. Instead of linking papers, I generally draw up a graphical abstract or a comic about each manuscript when I post it on social media. So for instance, here is the first panel of the comic for my latest paper. I have the rest of the panels later down in the thread. Note here that I forgot to remind readers that it was a thread by posting the number of tweets. So I don't say like 1 out of 10 here. I recommend doing that. I just messed up. At the end of the thread, I tag all my collaborators and I link to the paper in case folks are interested in learning more. You may notice at the tippy top here, this says pinned tweet. You can choose a single tweet that's pinned to the top of your profile. So when somebody navigates to my profile, this is the first thing they see, not my most recent tweet. I can replace my pinned tweet at any time, but I can only have one at once. So when I publish my next paper, I'll put that comic as my pinned tweet instead. On YouTube, as I mentioned, you can add URLs. So I'll add my URL for my website, but anyone coming to that site would actually have to copy paste that and then go to my website. It's pretty inconvenient that they don't even bother to hyperlink it. A great way to catch users' eye and to make your post more relevant is to include photos. This is really basic stuff. Choose photos with basic good design principles. These camouflage baby birds will likely not catch viewers' eye as much as a well-lit, clean shot of a baby bird. But of course, maybe the whole point of your post is about camouflage. So in that case, post away. One thing to keep in mind is that Facebook and Twitter will crop your photos. So here's a cute picture of a field sparrow, but you see when I add it to Facebook, it crops out the little bird's face here in the little thumbnail. That's fine. People can click on the photo and I'll bring them to the normal photo that isn't cropped. But I think it's more impactful if people could see the whole bird. So you can actually go ahead and crop that photo so that it's in the square shape that Facebook wants it. And you can even change the contrast and lighting to make the bird a little bit more obvious. So I do this when I'm posting media on Facebook. You can edit photos in a photo editing software, which is what I do, or you can edit them right in the social media platform. So Facebook has an edit option. Once you upload the photo, you can see it here, this little like pencil icon. It'll take you to a screen where at the very least you can crop the photo. So if you want to make it square, you can do it here. While Facebook likes squarish photos, Twitter likes longer than usual photos, so longer than a camera might take them. So you can edit the photos by choosing the long frame on the bottom of the edit window. So there's an option to make it a normal size photo, you can make it a long photo, or you can make it a square photo. And then you can use a zoom option to crop it into that shape should you choose. On the Twitter app, you can actually edit the photo more by adding some filters, but that's not a possibility on the desktop app, which I think is a shame. It's important to caption your photos for visually impaired folks who are using automated screen readers. So they're not viewing the photos, the screen reader is going to be reading aloud what you write about those photos. You can caption them in the post itself on Facebook. So here I include brackets and I say what's in the photos, in this case, my rat and my cat. You can also click on each photo and you can add a description for each photo if you so choose. And even going into that editing option, you can go to the alternate text fields and put in text that the screen reader can access. On Twitter, once again, you can choose that edit option. There's an option to crop it, but then if you navigate to the right of that, there's a feature called Alt, where you can add alt text up to 1,000 characters to describe your photo to the best of your abilities so people will know what's going on. It may not be as relevant for something like a bird photo, so I would generally just say something like a brown speckled bird with a gray head and a yellow beak. But if you're posting something like a comic or a paragraph of information, you would really need to put this description so that people can see what you're saying. What about videos? They're super dynamic. They can definitely draw folks' interest. They might be a little bit harder to caption. You might be able to say that this is a snake eating a baby bird, or this is a baby bird hatching out of an egg, but it's hard to convey what the videos really look like. In this case, captions are super important for the hearing impaired, especially if you're talking over your video. YouTube is a really good place to build captions. So when you go to the video editing option, you can navigate down to a transcript option. It'll bring you to a window where you can upload pre-made transcriptions, or you can make some in the app itself. It's fairly easy to use. The video will play. You'll hear your voiceover. You can pause the video, type in what you just heard, and it'll put that caption over the part of the video that you just watched. Once you have the transcription, you can download that timed text file. And if you have access to a professional editing software like Adobe Pro, you can actually overlay that timed text file onto your video so you can have permanent captions when you upload that video to Facebook or Twitter, which I think is really useful. Once again, it's onerous, it takes time, but now you're making your video more accessible to a broader audience. Editing a post is an option on Facebook and YouTube, but not on Twitter. Twitter is forever. In some ways, I really like that. So let's say on Facebook, I posted that birds are the best animal, and I tagged it with the evergreen provocative hashtag birds versus fishes. Someone may comment in agreement and share the post, but I could later edit it to the exact opposite meaning, rendering any comments and shares misleading. This wouldn't happen on Twitter. When you retweet something, you can be confident that that post is never going to change, that that message is going to stay the same. Of course, this means that you can't edit out typos either, but you can always delete tweets and try again, which I do quite frequently. So you have some good material. You have a photo, you have a video, you have some text. How do you drive engagement on those posts? In my opinion, the golden rule of social media is this. If you want more followers, friends, and viewers, you need to interact often. Follow as many people as you can. They'll often follow you back. Post often, comment often, like people's media, share people's media. Just be on social media and you'll slowly start accruing followers and views. You can also link your work to a broader interested community on Facebook and Twitter by using hashtags in your posts. These are simply short words or phrases following a pound sign. In many spaces, there are some frequently used hashtags, something like hashtag SciComm for science communication posts, hashtag RStats to help with statistics in R, hashtag PhD chat for conversations about life as a PhD student, hashtag academic chatter for conversations about being in academia in general. These can be really useful. Every time I run into a problem with R, I just tweet about it and I throw in that hashtag RStats and people will generally help me within a couple hours at the longest. So I found that really, really useful. If you want to instead make your own hashtag, such as a unique one for your project to tie all your posts together, make it short, make it descriptive, make it memorable, make it easy to search and explain it somewhere. So maybe in your profile. So I'll put project hashtag prairie babies because that's the project that I worked on for my master's. Hashtags aren't case sensitive, so capitalize each word. That makes it easier for screen readers to read those words aloud rather than trying to squish them into a single word. For instance, here's my grassland bird hashtag, prairie babies. Capitalize both words. We call this camel case because it makes the word have humps like a camel. Avoid unnecessary abbreviations that folks won't understand. So many bird researchers, for instance, will use 4-letter codes for their bird species, but only other researchers and hardcore birders understand what this means. So I would recommend not using them. And don't inadvertently make your hashtags offensive. For instance, if you're chasing dick sissels around for your undergraduate work, don't go with the hashtag chasing dicks, even though dick is the abbreviation for a dick sissel. Remember to be as inclusive as possible. If you're talking about life as a PhD student or as a graduate student, use hashtag grad chat instead of hashtag PhD chat, so you aren't leaving out master's students, as they're also graduate students. This is a personal pet peeve of mine, having done a master's degree. I've found that polls engage a lot of people. Folks like answering questions and taking quizzes, after all. On Twitter and Facebook, you can make polls. On Twitter, you're limited to 4 options, while on Facebook, you can have many more. On Facebook, or on Twitter rather, folks get to choose one option and then they get to see the results. I recommend always adding a 4th option on the poll that says see results, as folks who don't have an answer to the question because it doesn't apply to them or something like that, they might still want to see the results of the poll so they can learn about the question and learn about people's feedback, but they can't click any other option. So see results is always a good way to allow them to do that. Another great way to drive interactions that's pretty labor intensive, but is really, really rewarding, is by running a recurring game. So here a researcher posts cat photos and asks her followers if the photo is a hashtag cougar or not. She does this every week, so you can always reliably go to her website and try to decide if the photo is a cougar. In another example, this researcher posts photos of birds with the handle or the hashtag bird quiz. Folks will search out these games every week, comment on them, share them. It's a great way to bring folks to your profile where you can then hit them with other cool science information later. Perhaps the most successful Twitter science game is March Mammal Madness. This researcher makes a bracket every year that shows mammals and other animals and plants facing off. During evenings in March, she uses a weighted number generator to choose a winner, then asks the scientists to write a blow-by-blow description of the battle, chock full of facts about the biology of the animals and plants competing. Folks get really into this, making fan arts, running competitions with their friends in their labs, and it ultimately shows. In just one day, these posts reach over 5 million people. That's 5 million people learning facts about mammals and their friends. You can see it in Google search activity. Around the world, and especially in the US, the number of searches for the weirdest animals that she includes spikes almost every day following the bracket drop, especially due to school children searching those terms because a lot of teachers will use this in schools. You can see from these related queries that folks are Googling all sorts of related animals that are included in these brackets. It's a truly incredible SciComm effort, and it continues to grow every year. So how often should you post on social media to create an impact and reach an audience? Know that there are a lot of people on social media. 500 million tweets are sent each day. So how do you keep your information from getting lost in the feed? 300 hours of YouTube videos are uploaded each minute. In general, Twitter posts only reach people for the first day. After that, nobody sees your posts. Facebook posts will last a few days. YouTube videos, on the other hand, will continue to accrue views for years. So these are recommendations pulled from advice to company advertisers, but they're still a little bit relevant for us as science communicators. On Facebook, they recommend posting once a day, either an organic post or a shared post. Do it in the afternoon, because that's when Facebook users are the most active. Twitter, because of its short longevity, is a completely different beast. They recommend posting 15 times a day to stay relevant, spreading your posts out throughout the day. The high end of that recommended posts, 51 per day. I consider myself a very active Twitter user, and I rarely hit these numbers, but I do try to do something every single day. It's rarely about my science every day. Instead, I engage people with photos of a bird to keep myself relevant in their feed. So when I post science things later, they'll be there and they'll be following me. I sit down for a few hours about once a month, and I schedule a bird photo a day for the rest of that month. So I don't have to be active on Twitter if I don't want to be, but my feed stays relevant. folks seem to like those tweets more than my science posts, I can reach thousands of viewers a day with my bird posts. So just this last Saturday, I auto posted this woodpecker photo. Your impressions tells you the number of people who saw that tweet on Twitter. 62,000 people saw it. 2,646 people interacted with the tweet by liking it, by clicking on the photo, by retweeting it, clicking on the hashtag I made, etc. Every time this happens, I get dozens of more followers who all become a potential audience for my science-related posts when I actually make them. Professional YouTube accounts also have some absurd recommendations. If you're making entertainment-related videos, the recommendation is to post 1 per hour per day. For educational videos, it's recommended you post once per day or once per week. Of course, again, these are recommendations for professional communicators, so don't get overwhelmed. I sort of use Twitter as a repository for my science videos. I dump 20 or 30 about every 6 months or so. But remember, YouTube videos continue to accrue views for a while, so folks will be interacting with those YouTube videos years later. So in summary, it's recommended you post on Facebook daily, on Twitter multiple times per day, and this is when scheduling can be your friend, and on YouTube weekly, but of course you do what you can. Okay, so you've gone through all this work to curate a social media feed. How do you gauge success? Are you reaching audiences? Are they learning? Do they care about your work? On Twitter, you can see the number of people who comment, retweet your tweet, and like it. So of course, the more comments, retweets, likes, the merrier. You can click on this button on the far left that looks like a little bar chart to get more detailed analytics. Impressions are the number of people who viewed your tweet. Engagements are the total number of people who interacted with your tweet in some way, and it will break it down so you can see what those people are actually, how those people are actually interacting. On Facebook, you can see likes and shares as well, but to my knowledge, there are no detailed analytics like you would get on Twitter. If you want to get more complicated, you can actually go to a website like Twitter Analytics website, set the time period for which you want stats, and get overall stats for your entire profile. So here are my stats for the 28 days before I looked them up. How many times did people view your profile? How many people mentioned your account? How many people followed you, etc. There's also a third-party site called Social Bearing that will break it down for you even more. You can only look at the last few days on your feed, unfortunately. You used to be able to do any time period, but now there's a paywall. But you can still get some interesting statistics. You can get a breakdown of your account showing how many profiles you're following, how many lists you're in, etc. You can see the breakdown of tweets, just like Twitter Analytics. Sorry, the slide is out of date, so you can no longer look at a time frame as long as 120 days. You can sort your tweets by the number of likes or the number of retweets to get a sense of what media is the most important to your followers. They rank tweet by sentiment using the connotations of the words that you use. So are the tweets relaying good moods or terrible moods? Obviously, something like if I'm tweeting about predators, that will be a terrible tweet because it's dangerous sounding, I guess. Still interesting to see, I think. What domains are you sharing? They even make word clouds of the words that you use most often and the hashtags you use most often. I don't know how useful this is for your science communication efforts, but it's sure a lot of fun, I think. On your YouTube page, you can see the number of views that each video has and the like to dislike ratio. You can also navigate to analytics to get a better breakdown of your videos. So you can see how views have accumulated over time, how long the audience is actually watching the video for, this audience retention metric. You can see where the viewers are coming from. So I can tell that most of the viewers who are watching this particular video are coming from these other videos that my video is being recommended following the end of those videos. So you can start to get a sense of who your audience is by looking at these analytics. But ultimately, that doesn't really tell you if people are learning or if people care. There's no easy metric for that, of course, but there are some good signs. I tweet a lot about removing cowbird eggs from nests. This is a perennial topic. And so since I started doing this, I was quoted in an Audubon magazine article, and I was invited to give seminars on the topic. A A colleague tweeted about chasing around dick thistles and was asked to blog about it for the Journal of Animal Ecology. I tweeted about our prairie birds, and a reporter from Birding Magazine joined us in the field to learn more and did this whole feature about it. A researcher recently found one of my YouTube videos of cowbirds and used it as an example in a research manuscript. Every month, folks see my graphical abstract and direct message me asking for a PDF of my manuscript. And so to me, it seems like my efforts are paying off and people are learning about the things that I'm sharing. So how would I recommend sharing material on each of these sites? On Twitter, I'd include captioned visual media, a short jargon-free message, relevant hashtags, and some sort of game or poll to engage my viewers. On Facebook, I'd also include some sort of captioned visual media, a longer message, but putting that punchline up front in case the message gets cropped. I would link to other media, again, because you can. And I do it within some sort of particular group, like a Kansas birding group or some other interested audience, so that I'm targeting people who care. On YouTube, I'd post a catchy descriptive title. I'd choose a neat thumbnail to represent the video when I'm uploading it. So I didn't really talk too much about how you actually upload a file because it's pretty straightforward, but you can choose the thumbnail so people can see the photo that you want them to see. I'd of course make sure that I caption it with closed captioning and that the video is high quality. I'd include a lot of metadata tags to reach a larger audience. I'd nestle the video in a playlist so folks can find more of my content. And I would include captions with links to other accounts like my website should people want to learn more. So SciComm and social media, use it. You can target different audiences and different formats on the different sites. Be aware of media accessibility and plan accordingly with captions. Foster an identity through hashtags and through consistent, simple handles, but don't share the posts. So link accounts, but don't link the posts. Interact with others through lists, groups, games, and more. Tag your collaborators, share the love. Promote your social media feed off social media, such as on your website or your business cards. And remember that not everyone is on social media. Of course, continue to communicate science to reach as many audiences as you can, especially those who don't have internet access. So that's all I have. So I'd love to take questions. I know I don't have a lot of time left, but maybe one or two. Up to Dr. Tobler. I can't hear you. I don't know if other people can.
Mike has a mute button too. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Sarah. If anyone has a question for Sarah, please unmute yourself better than I just did and ask. You may also just post your questions in the chat. Yeah, go for it, people.
And sorry if you can hear my pets constantly in the background. I can't make them be quiet.
So Brian McCormack is asking, what scheduler do you use?
So when I'm using, so I schedule mostly Twitter posts, and I just use Twitter as like in Twitter scheduling right now. So when you type out the post, you can click on a scheduling button down by the tweet scheduler or down by the tweet button, and I just schedule it from there. I also sometimes use TweetDeck, which is a third-party app that allows you to schedule tweets and to view all your scheduled tweets, which is helpful. And I use that primarily until Twitter ended up adding a schedule option. Hope that answers your question. I don't schedule my Facebook posts. I think you can, but I don't post frequently enough that I feel the need to schedule them. And YouTube, I generally just dump 20 videos at once on some random day, so I don't schedule there either. But I think scheduling is an option within YouTube as well.
Anyone else? Any questions left? If not, as you can guess, you can probably reach Sarah on social media. And knowing her, they will be happy to address your questions as they arise. But thank you so much for coming, Sarah. We really appreciate you, and hopefully we'll get to see you soon in person again.